Hello everyone. I got inspired today to actually attempt this oil painting venture. This used to be my watercolor swatch book, and I have gessoed many pages in here. I thought I had gessoed all of the pages, but at some point I just stopped because it was very, very time consuming, and it was one of those things that every day I would gesso a couple of pages and then put it aside to dry, and I think I got about, well, this far. Far enough. I had gessoed over a lot of the swatches that I had in here, and I have a new thing that I do with the swatches, and just putting them in the palette and stuff. But when I first started watercolor, I did it in this little book, and rather than toss the book, I just repurposed it for this. So yeah, so I'll show you guys the things that I have strewn about here because I don't want to already be totally overwhelmed by the fact that this takes a lot of preparation and there are a lot of supplies involved. So I tried to make it easy on myself by originally just making this little sketchbook so that I wouldn't have to use the excuse that I needed this big workspace and this easel setup and everything, which, I mean, I'm sure that's ideal when you're doing larger paintings, but because I'm just trying to get back into it, I want to start with the sketchbook. And there are a lot of people online who showed how to do the oil painting in sketchbooks, and I just thought that was a really good idea, even though, still a little bit of a pain, because once you paint in it, you got to set it aside and let it dry, and you can't really close the book right away like you can oftentimes with acrylic or watercolor. I'm going to use some acrylic in here as a underpainting. That's a quick and fast way to get your underpainting done unless you're using other techniques like wipeout method. So I got these way cheap, I'm sure, quality wise, but less intimidating. US Art Supply oil paints, and this will make life a little bit easier because they are brand new and I can just open up each one pretty easily, I'm sure. They feel a little bit more liquidy than a lot of the more professional paints coming out of the tube, which will require a lot less mixing. That is one of the things I think I despised most about working with oils. And I mean, this is all absolutely just me being super opinionated about my experience. Of course, it's just my personal experience. I'm not trying to say anything negative about oil paint in general because it's such a beautiful medium. But a lot of the things that I found really frustrating with it were having a palette that was simply flat with just little piles of paint and nothing to really, corral the paints in their own little spots. I mean, you can do whatever you want, I've seen people use, like these to do oil paint. I know that the traditional oil painters would be scoffing at that, but yeah, I've also got some palette paper here. It's just a plastic on one side and just regular paper on the other so it doesn't seep through. And you can just throw it away when you're done, especially with these cheaper paints. And that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing. But I don't know, this video is mostly just to kind of show you guys how I decided to start. Because thinking about all this and what you might need could take you a really long time to undertake something like this if you wanted to. I mean, it's taken me a long time and I've done it before. But trying to figure out how to do it at home without a studio and a big setup, using the sketchbook. I think what I would start out doing first would be using one of these, and I've just used Folk Art acrylic. It's just the cheap soft body acrylic that doesn't require, again, like any mixing like the thick Liquitex tubes. So I've got like a navy and a burnt sienna and a white, and that would be like the first step, at least for me starting out doing this. Another thing that I think a lot of people, what steers them away from using oils in general, is the mediums that you have to mix with them, and cleaning your brushes and things like that. I've had this brush soap for many years. I bought this for school, so this is well over 25 years old, and it looks like it's barely used. I mean, it's shrank a little bit. It's not the size of the container anymore, but it doesn't smell bad. I think it's like Castile based. It just smells like lemon. And once you kind of get a lot of the paint off your brushes with the oil and the other cleaning solutions that I'm going to share with you here in a minute, then you just wash your brushes with this. So I've seen people use safflower oil as a medium instead of linseed. Walnut oil is another option, but it's more expensive, and safflower oil actually speeds the drying time up a little bit too, which I'm super impatient. You know, it still leaves it workable. You could also paint without any oil added, just straight out of the tube, and these are a little bit thinner than regular oil paint, so I think they would lend themselves nicely to that. And if people didn't know, you can use essential oil of orange or lemon to clean your brushes. It's also surprisingly archival. So if you wanted to use this as like a terpenoid, or I wouldn't call it odorless, I mean it smells like oranges, but if you wanted to use this as a thinner, you absolutely could. You don't even need very much. And yeah, this is non-toxic. You can you know, breathe it, and I mean if it got too strong for you, I'm sure you could open a window, but you know, oranges usually smell pretty nice. And these brushes I've had for a really long time as well, but a lot of these are, you know, obviously for working on larger pieces, but you know, you'll always need a palette knife of some kind. There's large and small. Some of them are a little bit softer than others, but generally with oil paint, you want some pretty stiff brushes, and they're really long too, so I'm not sure how that's going to work on my desk here. But the idea with long brushes is to paint far away from your surface and use a different manner of, when you're painting with long brushes, you're just like, you're wielding it like a sword. And I've also learned you can do that with pencils too. You might even get even more even strokes on both sides, because your hand, if you're right or left-handed, you tend to be more, you know, your curves show up more on the left and things are not as even on the right. But if you're coming at everything from one spot, one angle, everything tends to be a little bit more even. So but I'm going to pull out a couple of semi-small brushes, because this is a very small sketchbook. I think these are the smallest brushes that I have. They're like little filberts, I guess, little mini flat pointed like cat's tongue style brushes. This one's just a round, looks like a size 6 or something, and a flat, very small flat brush. So, all right, that's what we'll start out with. Yeah, this is a canvas roll, so it has a flap that when if your brushes still have oil on them or something, you close the flap and just roll it up, and they'll still, like if you haven't washed them completely and you're going to paint with them again later, and you just clean them out with the oil, you can just put them back in here and come back to them and they're ready to go. All right, not sure how far I'm going to get with this video. I just wanted to kind of come on and break the ice with this part of the getting started, past the mental block of like, what do I actually have to do this? I'm already slightly overwhelmed. At least the second one for sure. The first one might be white, so we're gonna skip that one. And I'm gonna move these to the side and bring my little palette paper right here. So I would just, oh, that might not be yellow. Oh, these are, you gotta poke them. So what usually with these types of tubes, if you guys don't know, there's usually a little point on the other side. You flip it over, use the point to puncture the tube, and then you have your paint. And I can tell right there, even though I don't have good eyesight, I know this is not yellow. So it's not what I'm looking for. Now I have to figure out what order these are in. I'll take the umber out. And I hear the traffic outside my window that is closed. That's how loud it is when it's closed. All right, got some umber. So I'm going to squeeze. Ooh. That's got a lot of separation going on. So I'm going to mush the tube around and see if that helps. I knew these paints would be kind of on the thinner side, which makes mixing really, really easy. Some of the more professional paints, depending on the pigments, are so thick when you squeeze them out. You gotta use like 2 hands to do it. And if you got any kind of problems with dexterity or like arthritis or anything, which I don't, but that would be, it's really hard. There we go. I'm gonna go to the first row and see if we can find a yellow. Let's learn our lesson and mix it first if we can. So this is more the consistency of what I'm expecting or looking for with this paint. So I'm gonna skip ahead a couple and maybe we'll hit a nice red. Yeah, this is darker and cooler. And this, now I can read it. This is crimson. Getting started with things is sometimes the hardest, especially with a medium you've never tried before, or just with any art project in general. Even if you're used to it, it can be very intimidating. Like, you just, especially if you've got a little ADHD going on, you're like, where do I even start? I've had these supplies for quite a while, and like I said, I have used oil paints before, but trying to figure out how to tackle it from a different angle after absorbing some YouTube tutorials and just watching how other people do things. You know, when you go to school and you've never done something before and you just basically do what the teacher or instructor tells you, and you know, you don't really have to think about it too hard. They give you a syllabus and tell you what to buy for your class. You just show up and you do the project. You know, but when you're trying to come up with ideas at home and you want to try out different supplies and techniques, it can be overwhelming to do all that stuff all on your own. This is cerulean. At least it says cerulean on it. I'm gonna assume it's just a warm blue that is fine for the purposes of what we're doing today. And I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze out a little bit of this lamp black that, if I need to make this umber a little darker, I'm not sure how sheer these paints are, since the quality of them is a little questionable, or how intense the pigment is, so I'm going to assume that it's student grade learning quality. And that's fine, because that's exactly what I need it to be. Buy any really, really good stuff until I get used to the medium again. All right, we've got our red, blue, yellow, black, and umber squeezed out. Got a few brushes pulled out. And so now I am just going to set this aside for a second. I do have a cloth. These are just like shop rags type thing. Yeah, I did pull out, these are just like little short-handled acrylic / oil brushes. You can use these for just about any medium, really. They're stiff. I think I put these aside as like a travel pouch for gouache, but they're just some random brushes that I either had extra of or they weren't like my favorites. They're very short-handled, so I'm going to use them to sketch out a little underpainting with my acrylic. That way it'll be pretty dry by the time we go to use the oil. I think we'll use navy. It's easier to see. And I will grab the plastic palette to squeeze out a little bit of this acrylic. I think it's really cool what you can do with oil paint. I mean, the most I've worked with close to that is oil pastels. Those are a lot easier. I mean, I don't mean easy to learn, but they're easier as far as setup. You just you got something to wipe your hands on and a couple of blending tools, and you just go in straight with the drawing, and you can, yeah, it's not a lot of stuff to pull out. Really, the only thing about oils has been the setup for me not to want to pull it out. Also, I'm going to mention that I have to be very conscious of the clothing. You gotta throw something over what you're wearing, or just put on some stuff you don't care about. Maybe we'll just do a flower. Florals are a bit, like, I never really know how to shade flowers. This one's a little bit from the side, I guess. So this should dry in like a matter of seconds. And then we can go in with the oils. Oh, how exciting. You guys are about to watch me just like completely fail. I don't know, it's still fun. I mean, you gotta start somewhere, right? Now we don't need this anymore. I feel like it's like when you're cooking. I want to do that with these things. So now that I'm done using one thing, I want to go put it away and only have out what I'm going to be using the rest of the time now. Because now that I'm not going to be using the acrylic anymore, it's like now I want to go put the acrylic like somewhere away off the desk. I mean, it doesn't take too long to dry. It's not totally dry yet, but while it's doing that, I'm going to pick out what brush I'm going to use. And I think generally you do the background first, because if you go over these outlines while you're painting and it kind of goes over the background a little bit, that looks more natural than trying to paint the background after you've done these. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to paint just the flowers. So I'm going to use this little cat tone brush. I wanted to like dip into some water first before I go over. Oh my gosh. It is the safflower oil that I need to use. And what I was going to get out, but I still don't have, I would need those little dipping jars, like baby food jars, or they make these little, they like clip onto the edge of your palette if you're going to be using a flat wooden palette. One holds your turpentine or your turpenoid, and the other one holds your oil medium. And I cannot find mine that I have somewhere. So I think I might choose the lid of my watercolor porcelain dishes, because it's just oil. I can just wipe it right out. It's glass. So yeah, let's do that. That'll be for blending. Tell me if you guys have heard of the fat over lean rule in oil painting. And when working with acrylic and watercolor, thick over thin is kind of a thing, especially with gouache and acrylic. And I always translated that to mean fat over lean as well. But in oil paint, fat over lean literally means fat as in oil, as in your medium. Over lean means the unmixed paint, the paint that's just straight from the tube. So from what I understand, you go in first with whether it be your turpenoid or your straight paint, and you do your first layer, and then you do your successive layers, adding more of your linseed oil or your oil medium. Now, to me, that's a little, I don't know. I think I would be adding the thinner if I was using it, but I'm not. I'm using just straight paint. So this is going to be my lean, and then adding more oil to it as I go would be my fat. So I don't know, we'll see. Okay, this is all fairly dry, I'm thinking. Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to go over my outlines with this crimson. Not a texture, but a firmness in the brush that I'm really not used to working with. Don't put your arm in the paint palette. Oil paint is like painting with makeup or food. And yeah, it's just something you have to get used to, just the feeling of it. It has a nice smell. I assume that there's, I mean, I always kind of thought that was nostalgic, the smell of oil paint. I do kind of like it. So, I don't know if you guys can see my paint palette here. I'll move this over. Place this here. All right. So I've got a little bit of this red left on my brush, and so next to this, the main red one, I'm going to grab a little bit of this yellow and add that to it. And then maybe later I'll come in and add some white to lighten it up even more. But And next to this blue, I'll probably grab some yellow and make the green. So weird though, like I'm gonna get a little bit of this safflower oil and add it in because I don't know what I'm doing. And to grab some more of that yellow, I'm gonna have to wipe this brush off and be really, really careful about where I'm wiping the brush on this cloth so that I don't keep re-wiping it on something, picking up more paint. All right, you know, I could just literally grab just the yellow and go in and start blending, but I don't know, I'm kind of scared. All right, we got a decently lighter color, and I'm gonna go near the edges of this flower, kind of blend into the dark. And I'll probably have to end this video soon because it's getting a little too long, but I just thought that like I said before, I thought this might be interesting or useful to you guys to see how to start something that feels a little bit overwhelming, or like what do you do? How do you start? And it motivated me to start, to just film it, you know, be like, hey, maybe somebody else would benefit from me being hesitant about starting, and then it would make me want to start. So all these pages are just gessoed with either white or clear. I think on the pages that I didn't have any swatches going on, I just did clear over it, and then I eventually, as you can see, I didn't do the entire book. I stopped at some point just because it just got too much. But the acrylic underpainting method is it's much quicker, as you can tell. Although it doesn't really take very, you know, a long time to dry when you do the turpenoid and the oil. It's really not, it's not too bad, especially if you're doing it on a canvas or a panel board. But I think paper might take a little bit longer, even if it's gessoed, to dry. The technique that I'm using might be called alla prima, because I'm not doing, you know, the underpainting and then going in with the value layer and then going over and glazing that with a transparent color layer. You know, those are all pretty traditional techniques. So before I go in with the white, I think I'm going to mix up some green, and that is so overpowering. I would probably just need a little tiny bit of blue in that yellow. Wow. Well, I'm gonna go around the edges then with this darker tone of this greenish blue. I think this needs a little bit of time to dry or cure or whatever it's gonna do. So maybe I will pop back on in either a second video or add it to the end of this video. Alright, so I'm going to add some white in. I'm using a bigger brush. It's a size 6. and I'm not sure if it's going to be too big. And now I'm just like kind of abusing the little painting, and I'm just doing whatever now. So there's really not much to glean from this anymore. But okay, so I was, I guess you could say, brave enough to do an underpainting or undersketch of a portrait. Let's see what happens. The flowers, like, I don't know what's happening with them. Let's mix up, well, maybe not mix up a skin tone, but because I think I'm just going to blend on the page like I do with gouache or watercolor or anything else. I'm going in with some burnt umber. I'm just going to outline what I already did here, and we'll see if I completely jack this up rather than waste the paint on my rag or whatever. And I think the key, what I'm trying to remember, or what's coming back to me very fast here, is the thinnest, getting it down to like a really thin blend in the first layer and then building on top of it, which I wasn't really doing with the flowers. I was just kind of going in thick and continuing to build on that a little bit too early probably. But I think maybe because I'm doing this on my comfort subject, I'm realizing, oh yeah, I probably should have really rubbed it in and blended it in to where it was almost dry, getting a lot of the dry brush strokes. That way my brush is getting clean too. Anyway, yeah, I find that to be a little bit more enjoyable actually. Just blending it down to be a very, very thin, very, very thin layer. That could work. Now let's see if I could do it with the skin. Mix up some yellow and some white. And a touch of this red. And there's some umber already on the page, so let's see what we get here. This is somewhat of a mid-tone. Well, we could be onto something here. Blendy, blendy. That's what it's all about. I guess that's why everybody loves oil paint. It's so blendy. I mean, you guys know I do this with gouache too, where I do everything very watery. And I don't really do anything thick and opaque until the end, where I put my highlights and dark tones in. Yeah, that's a problem. I keep like getting my arm in the paint palette, but yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really a wrong way to, or how thick or thin your layers should really be. To me, I think the thinner the better, because then you can continue to build without it becoming a mess. Lesson learned on that first try there with the flowers. Huh. Alright, well let's get a little bit more red for the cheeks. And then I can put a little bit probably in the nose. I had an instructor at my painting class, the last one that I took when I did all of the gouache paintings. There's a lot of people in that class that were using oils, and I just didn't want to deal with the whole like setup, and you know, because I was traveling to a class that I would have to account for the preparation time for setup and cleanup, and I wanted it to be as quick as possible because I never knew if my ride was going to be, you know, early. But I would always hear her telling people, put more paint on your palette. Put more paint than you think you're gonna need. That would have been like tragic advice for me. I would have kept wondering why I was making such a mess, because I think I need to work with less paint. Oops. Yeah, I need a thinner brush. Maybe I can just form it into a thin point when I'm about to go in. I'm realizing this glare is from the shiny oil is a little bit of a problem. I almost feel like I could like finish this really quickly. Like, are you not supposed to be able to finish a painting, like an oil painting, very fast? You're supposed to just keep layering and take your time, let it dry and stuff. I don't know. I tend to ruin things when I spend too long on them. You know, as you guys can tell in my videos, I finish them within the video when I should probably do layering. Let it dry, take out a blow dryer actually, which I don't think I've ever done on my channel. It's got some nice blendability. I'm gonna put some, at the risk of being too overpowering. I don't know how dark this black is, but I'm gonna mix it with a little bit of umber and go in and hit some of these parts of the hair. Yeah, there's we have a friend, one of our art friends here on YouTube named Shirley Linkus. She does excellent oil painting work, and I was watching one of her recent videos where she's doing a double portrait, and she's going in like so light and so like just the most delicate brush strokes, and I'm zooming in and I'm trying to really, you know, pay attention to that, and it was just so fascinating to like watch how just the care that goes into each little like line and angle, and especially, you know, which I think is really important for, or why you would, the importance of the flat brushes, because they get such nice lines, and you can you know, if you're careful and you just like dab that brush on in the right spot, you can get some really nice straight lines. And I'm still really used to round brushes, and I think that they're, you know, probably because of the whole drawing thing, you know. Drawing with a brush is what I do most. I have to learn to just like stamp the brush, like dot it or place it, you know. See how that goes. Yeah, she's got super light skin. Guess you could always go in and darken it up in some areas. Right now I'm just trying to cover all the white of the paper. Ooh, that's not what we wanted. See, I think that's the other thing that always scared me about oil painting, is if you touch something, you can smear it really, really easily. See, I don't want that there. I'm getting really, really close to that edge where I did the darker lip color. Probably should have waited till last with that. Kind of like with watercolor, you know? You do all the skin tones and the eyes and stuff, and you do like the lips last because they can bleed or smear in this case. The layers are so thin on here, I could just go back over it after I blend it really, really thinly. It was looking so good a minute ago. I messed it up. Let's see if I can fix it. Because my underpainting is still there, so. This burnt umber is a very cool color, cool as in temperature, and it kind of grays it down a little bit. So it's because I was trying to do that thing like I was doing with the hair, where it was really, really thin, and I was blending it like into the paper, like scumbling it into the paper, and it was blending nicely. And then as soon as it got thick, it got messy again. Well, maybe this experiment is done for today. And then I will have to come back and reassess once it's, I don't know, kind of dry. And like, what is it like to paint back over it when it's in that state? Seems like this would be the point in which you would like let it dry, or at least set up. I don't know, does oil paint ever dry? My first attempts at trying to come back to this medium. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you for stopping in and watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. I hope that was in frame.